Oh,
35 of Effluvium. The time is now 6:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, May 8th, 2023. We have two special guests, one returning guest. We have Marie-Pierre Blanchette of Miskeo Parfums. And we have returning Pep Dalessandri. You may know him as the Scentinel from YouTube and Instagram. So before we get things started with our guests, I'm going to go back to the three first impressions that are a tradition for the start of our Effluvium sessions. So I have three exciting ones. Well, at least one exciting one because it was a nominee for the Art and Olfaction Awards. As a matter of fact, Dana Sandu, my friend, a nose, sent me a sample of Mio Fusione, and the name of the fragrance is Encore de Temps. That will be the first of the three impressions. The other two are recent releases from Dries Van Noten, Orange Smoke Cologne, and Somapol Cologne. So those are the three first impressions to start things off. And then following that, we'll bring in our special guests. So I'm going to visit the chat here and see what's taking place. And my good friend Keith won't be able to make it, but he will be watching the archive. I'm always glad to see a friend check in, even if they can't watch the stream live. That's most appreciated. And hi, Alex, my good friend Alex. Good to see you. And hey there, GMG. Long time no speak. We were just chatting a little bit earlier. Philippe, popping in to say hi. Must work on an essay and wishes all of us a great stream. And he'll be catching up later. All right, so let's get things started. We do have 16 people who are currently tuned in, and I will start with the first of the three first impressions. The Art and Olfaction Awards finalists, Encore du Temps by Mio Fusione or Fusione. And this was actually composed by Giuseppe Imprezzabile. And this, as far as I know, has some florals, some osmanthus, magnolia, champaca. So immediately I do get this impression of mandarin orange and other citruses, perhaps some bergamot. It's very tea-like, which I come to expect with a fragrance that has osmanthus. Seems to be a trend to do sort of an osmanthus / tea. But this is a bit more green, like sort of like the tannins of like a green tea. And it is this sort of like a yellow floral kind of energy coming from it. Or almost, I could say, like an orange floral. I know that isn't technically a category, but... And that could just be the citruses playing a large role in the opening. This is quite beautiful. So just want to remind folks that I am smelling from Mio Fusione Encore du Temps. There is this lactonic quality as well. Oh wow, very much like a tea. It's very much like a tea scent. Mate as well, sort of like the mate that kind of reminds me of the same mate accord, or similar to the mate accord in Isabelle Doyen's Anicutal Duel. Quite beautiful. Not conventionally pretty at all. Yeah, I do definitely want to spend a lot more time with this. It doesn't exactly come as a surprise that this would be a finalist with Art and Olfaction Awards. Beautiful stuff. So, mio fusioni, encore du temps. Now, these ones have had been given some attention because of recent releases of Dries Van Notten's. The first one, Orange Smoke Cologne. And this is an Anique Monardo. And this, as far as I recall, is very much like an orange blossom neroli kind of vibe, hence orange smoke. That dries down into an incense and resins. And it's a cologne concentration. At this point, the concentrations are pretty much arbitrary to me in terms of assessing performance and assessing all that sort of stuff. Really, I would just imagine it's just a smaller concentration of perfume, percentage to the alcohol. Wow. This is pleasantly green, pleasantly leafy, pétillant. And I already see this sort of convergence between the pétillant and the orange materials, the neroli and olibanum. There's some olibanum in this. And myrrh. Ooh, there's something fat coming through, like this fatty aurantiol orange blossom. Like it's muscling its way through. It's a bit aggressive. I mean, relative to everything else that is going on. But it's pleasant. This is pretty. Some Hedione. Oh no, I'm doing that again. Somebody's going to sue me. Oh God. I'm sorry. I do the hands sometimes. While I'm mentioning aroma chemicals, even better. God. I'm low rent. A low rent version. Yeah, that's really beautiful. But there's something about, there is this shifts base kind of aurantiol going on. Like I just detect what seems to be that, which is just verging on a little too much. Like I could do without that, but everything else surrounding it is quite pretty. So that is Orange Smoke by Dries Van Noten in a Anique Monardo composition. And then the other Dries Van Noten is a Sur Ma Peau Cologne Eau de Toilette. Well, it's rather confusing. This is orange. Oh, so they're both Eau de Toilette concentration. They're just referring to each as colognes. All right. So this is a Quentin Biche. And Quentin Biche for me is very hit or miss. Sometimes I'm enthralled. Sometimes I'm appalled. We'll see what direction this goes. Sur Ma Peau, which is once again a very citrus forward fragrance, orange blossom, vetiver, drying into vanilla and coumarin and all that good stuff. Let's see how I feel about this. Yeah, it's nice. It isn't anything I haven't smelled before. And I'm not terribly excited to wait for it to dry down to the vanilla and tonka bean. At least it isn't somewhat offensive. Some of Quentin Biche's compositions offend me in some point in the development, often at the top. It's quite nicely done. It's there's an aromatic quality to it, very sheer. The bergamot's very synthetic. It's kind of reminding me of like an orange amber from the 90s now. Nah. Sorry, Quentin. Nothing personal. You know, I do love a few of your creations, and they're in my collection. But I think so far out of the three, by a country mile, I'm most impressed with the Encore de Tom, Mio Fuscioni. So those are the three first impressions for today. I will probably visit them a little bit later in the stream, see how each of them have dried down on my skin, see where they go in the development. I'm going to go back to the chat here and check in, and then we're going to bring in our guest to get the conversation started. Hey there, Not in the Know. Lovely to see you. Oh, by the way, the Neo Fushini is singing on my skin, and it's a beautiful osmanthus. Fragrance Enthusiast is asking Perfume Tempo if he's tried Gucci Guilty Absolute. That's an AB conversation I'll see myself out of. Babouche, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it as well. Percolate. A little bit of percolation. Yes. So far, I'm impressed with it. So far, I'm delighted with it. Antonio Hobson, hi. How are you? Hey there, Duncan. Good to see you. And Boz, good to see you as well. Hi, Kay. Lovely to have you here. And Fernando, lovely to have you listening in. This can very well be treated as a podcast as well. If you can't see, you can listen. So great to have you folks here. We have 25 people tuned in. So we're going to move forward now. And our guest, just to give you some background, on the website for Miskeo, it says, perfumes are the stories we tell ourselves. And I love that. Miskeo, the name, is inspired by the Latin verb, miskeo, which means to blend, to mix, to join. It is a matter of everything in confluence, creating, discoveries, mistakes, and wonderful accidents that turn into, amazing discoveries, blending things. I'm so familiar with this as I read this, so familiar with that process of wonder that comes from blending materials together. And you find the synergy and the relationships that can be created through these raw materials in perfume, this transformation that takes place, turning them into something where the whole is far greater than the sum of their parts. Marie originally hails from Montreal. She's a self-taught perfumer. She has a background in anthropology, art direction, and design, with a strong, strong desire to create anything and everything. She developed her craft through bespoke perfumes for private clients and shaped her process based on the very unscientific method of trials and errors, following her intuition. Another thing that I'm familiar with, because in my perfume making journey, I have followed that intuitive process. And like her, I am aware of the Jean Carl method, but I wanted to sort of be a little bit more iconoclastic. Her influences are many and eclectic, namely dramatic landscapes, mythology, 70s playlists. Oh my God, we could just have a whole conversation about that. Cooking, big shoulder pad perfumes. Yet again, we could just spend the whole stream talking about that. Occult and witchy stuff. I can get into that too. And woman surrealists, count me in. Wonderful. And we have Pep. Pep is back. He's a co-creative director and the evaluator for Miskeo. He's been talking about fragrance on various social media platforms for over 6 years now, and you may know him as the Scentinel here on YouTube and on Instagram. And he was one of our guests earlier this season on Effluvium. So without further ado, I'm going to bring together everyone. So please welcome Marie and Pep.
Hi.
Hi. Mid-sip, just the way I like it. I love my coffee. A little late for so I know that it's morning.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear
What
me
an
okay?
introduction.
Thank you. It's well deserved. I'm just so glad that the two of you could join me here for Effluvium. So Pep, I understand it's bright and early in the morning there, hence your coffee.
It's just after 8 a.m. in the morning, Wednesday morning, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks, JJ.
You're welcome.
Hi, Marie.
Same. Hi. And hi, Jay, as well. Hi, Joseph. Thank you for inviting us. Super happy to be here.
Of course. So I wanted to just express to everyone at home or wherever they are. There's some people who are listening in their car. I love it. It's definitely like a podcast. How much I appreciate this right here, Pistol. I did a review for this last week, so it's the first in my collection from Miskeo, and I wanted to talk about this a little bit. This is the forthcoming release, June 1st, of the Fille. You might be able to help me with the pronunciation. Fille?
Pep, please go for it. You've practiced enough.
Fille. This is even with 4 years of French, I still have difficulty with some words. It's just when you have a lot of vowels and you don't know what to do with all of them.
I like to translate it to Italian, JJ. I'll just call it foglia.
Fair enough. This is beautiful, and I will tell you why I think that this is beautiful. I've worn it already about 2 or 3 times. And I actually was mentioning earlier the unconventional prettiness of the Mio Fucini. This is unconventionally pretty, and I love unconventional beauty because when we think of floral fragrances, some of us have this sort of Disney image of florals, and I love when a perfumer can explore the raw and real and less gussied up kind of flowers that are so wonderful in nature, and you highlight so many of them. That's why I'm in love, because you're able to do that with a plum, in my humble opinion. And in this, just for the folks who are curious, so this is the latest perfume, and it is Marie's Love Letter to Nature. It's very vegetal. It's a very vegetal. It's not your standard floral or your standard green scent, because we have the stems and the sap and the exudate and the gutations and all the things coming out of the plants, the pollen, all these flowers that you might find in a meadow. Instead of walking through a Disney garden, this is like going to a sanctuary and going through a meadow. And you have all those little flowers, like the little daisy-like flowers, the chamomile, the leaves. And then there's a linden blossom as well. One of my favorite flowers is linden blossom. And they bloom here. Oh, I love them. When it's like late June, early July, and it's a humid day, and they fill the air, you've captured an element of that. There's mimosa. Gorgeous, gorgeous stuff. This is what brings me to some of the first questions that I have. Where did your where did your inspiration for this approach come from? I want to kind of get a little bit of that background from you, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
For Fur in particular, or for any of the perfumes that we've been working on?
I will start with this one and your approach to yes.
I mean, in any case, it's pretty much the same anyways. I think it all comes from the fact that I'm not, I don't have the classic training. If you want in perfumery, I have a different background. I come from art direction, which I've done for about almost 20 years, more or less. And of course, I've done a lot of things on the side to feed my work as a designer. So I've done a lot of, painting and art on the side. I love movies. I love music. So I think it's kind of like that approach of taking everything from these inner worlds, if you want, join with my long love of perfumery. And of course, I will never pretend I know my materials as well as a perfumer that's been doing this for 20 years. But I think maybe having that fresh perspectives allows me to not, be stuck at mixing and trying things that, maybe should not be going so well together. So yeah, I think it's a mix of that is a different artistic approach and maybe not being classically trained in
It,
general.
it in a way, and this, and it reminds me also of another great, independent perfumer that is hit the scene recently, Mark Sage of Clandestine Laboratories.
Mm,
You have that you know the foundation, you have it there, but you don't necessarily um, adhere to it as gospel. You're
mm,
able to think outside of that the that construct of what classical
mm-hmm,
perfumery should be, and in a way
mm,
that's liberating, and you're able to explore some things that maybe few perfumers have dared to go.
mm.
And in a way, I think that might be to both of your advantage, because I mean, there's just fascinating stories behind each of them. um
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, this and maybe I can add also like in the end, like also where I'm older, I'm in my mid 40s. Also, my background of perfumes that shaped me are from that era. So I guess this kind of shows also into the perfumes I create. So
Yeah.
not vintagey, but you know, I like I feel like a bold statement, even if not all the perfumes that we created are old, but I guess that influence shows up a little bit, even if I don't want to.
And I'm not, yeah, I don't object to that at all either, because I do obviously have, as you can tell, a soft spot for a lot of the 70s and 80s releases, which, with your direction into green notes, like, I mean, we think of
Mm,
like the green greats of the 70s. So I
mhm,
do still pick up echoes of that, but your
mm.
own signature is there. So I wanted to ask how the two of you collaborated together. Pep, would you be kind enough to let us know how the two of you had joined in this
Yeah,
project?
sure, sure. Well, I think we Marie and I were following each other on Instagram, and I remember when she posted something about starting her own brand. I'm pretty sure I might have commented on the post or something like, like I'd be, very interested in trying them when they were out, and so we started talking about it. And I guess at some point, like I expressed the fact that I was interested in doing this kind of sort of evaluation work, not necessarily with Marie specifically, but then she offered to send samples and of the draft that she was working on. And it kind of just went from there, like, because I really liked what she was doing. And, I was on board with the whole philosophy of where she wanted to take the brand. And so it all kind of aligned with me. Like I'd had previous, I guess, opportunities to do this with other people, but there were just things that, like I probably didn't, I couldn't get behind, and this just sort of all worked. Everything was right, and we've had a really good working relationship since then. It was just an easy thing to do. So yeah, it was a bit of stars aligning and being in the right place in the right time.
Mm.
Very
I don't
nice.
know. Did you have a different interpretation, Marie?
Now it's Marie's take. Let's hear Marie's take.
We'll talk later. No, no, it's exactly that. I think maybe just a small part I want to add is that I really, like, as I was following him, also I kind of understood that somehow we had a similar view on the industry and similar principles in life as well. I think that we kind of discovered quite early on. Um, yeah, and I so badly needed someone smart and that knew what they were saying to smell what I was working on. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like, all my friends smell my stuff in my family, that's great. But I needed more of a professional opinion. So I guess this was super important for me to have that feedback and like kind of that external perspective on what I was doing. Tell me I'm not crazy.
Well, you have to be a little bit crazy.
Well, yeah, I am, but that's another show, maybe.
Join the club. So I wanted to get a little bit into your direction into more transparency with your brand and some changes and updates to your website, etc. Could you just elaborate on that if you don't mind?
We had like a little brief chat about this just before, and I think something that's really important and very much dans l'air du temps, so very much current now, is transparency in the industry, like cosmetic industry, but also the perfume industry. And I don't know, pretty much here everyone would know that Christophe Daniels started the Perfumery Code of Ethics, and that since then a lot of people kind of signed up to it and is trying to make those principles come to life. And for me, it's quite important as well. I think maybe going back to what I was saying before, that I'm kind of an outsider of, that world in some ways. And coming from product design as well, where, you're trying to be very transparent all the time with your users and do good product design. So this is something that to me is important anyways. And I think Pep as well, like, we're both people with a lot of integrity in general, and I don't want to bullshit my customers.
Right.
Colored language. Forget my French. Forgive my French.
No, it's welcome here.
Okay. Also, I swear, like I say that, I'm gonna try not to do that now.
I have a tendency as
usually.
well.
Okay. In any case, so super important for us to be transparent. But to be transparent, you also have to do a bit of education, because if you were starting to just, show your formulas to everyone, like, not everyone would understand what this is about and why there are certain things in there. So the first thing we did last year when we launched is to highlight 3 of the materials that we believe are important part, or are creating important part of the perfume. So there was already this on the website, but just the materials, nothing else. And since I had a live with Pep about, when was that? Maybe a month ago, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we discussed it prior to this, that maybe it was a good time to start talking about proportions of naturals and synthetics in the formula. This is something we've also added now to the website. And to push the envelope a little bit more, because it's such a big topic with the Perfumery Code of Ethics, is that for some of the naturals that we're claiming that are in there, we are showcasing as one of the more important material, not necessarily in quantity, but in what it brings to the soul of the perfume. So we are gonna actually publicly say percentages of how much of that material is in there. Yeah. So there's no false claim of like, ooh, there's jasmine, absolute, like very fancy jasmine, and then there's only like 0.004% of it in there.
Just to get away with saying that it's in there. Yeah. And a lot of naturals too are serve as modifiers. So the modifiers generally don't show up, in the notes pyramid. But I see what you're saying. It's more the ones where you're going to have a notes pyramid. You're going to in advertising the fragrance, you're showcasing certain accords, and you
Mm.
want to, if the naturals, correspond to them, that you're sharing how much is actually in there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, a very noble effort. I think that it's great that we're moving in that direction, because there's a lot of dubious ad copy as far
Yeah.
as things, like we all know about the ouds and the sandalwoods and the rare materials and the provenance of the materials. Like, are we
Mm-hmm.
really, are they really from these exotic places? I love it when it's like a material of which there is absolutely no natural version,
Mm.
and they still list a provenance. It's sort of like, you're not fooling certain people who know that. Like, there's no natural for that. But yeah,
Like
no,
orchids,
what's
like
that?
orchids from Tahiti or something like this.
Right, Tahitian orchids, or
Yeah.
yeah, I've seen things like that for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And as a side note, not to go on a tangent, but it's fascinating how many smells orchids can produce. It's like there's no
I
one
know.
orchid smell. Like, there's so many that, I mean, it runs from the gamut from like vaguely floral to chocolate to rotten meat. It's like, really, like when I see an orchid note, it says very little to me. When I see
Mm.
that, I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? But yeah,
Mm.
I love the whole concept of fantasy notes. Oh, well, that brings me to another question. Would you ever do a fantasy note, or would you rather in your compositions show notes that actually, for things that actually are scented in nature? I don't know how you feel about that.
I mean, to me, it goes back to the very big discussion of no pyramids. I think for me, they're a little bit inefficient. Like, yeah, we don't do no pyramids, in general. And I think impressions to me are a better way to describe what people that have never smelled your perfume would want to understand, rather than, listing 20 things that in the end, like, it doesn't help you really. And a lot of things come back all the time. So I don't know, like, maybe just to go back to your question, I don't want to go too much of a tangent, but maybe I would, if it would really serve people to really understand what this is about, right? So if um like if tomorrow I were to do something, let's say I were to do a perfume that celebrates, I don't know, Rome, for example, right? And I want to talk about like the Pantheon, and I want to talk about the stone, but the stone warmed up by the sun. Like, maybe this is something I would list as an impression, but clearly not as a note. I don't think you can find this on Fragrantica.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
maybe now you do, because there's pretty much anything.
No, that's true too. It's surprising what kind of notes actually exist in the
Mm.
what do you call it, the directory, or the, like.
If I just can add something to that conversation as well, JJ. Like when I first smell any of the drafts that Marie sends me, I always do it without, like, even though she makes the formula available to me later on, I always smell them without actually knowing anything pretty much other than a very slight outline of the brief or what's inspired. So, like, I can smell stuff. I think I smell things. And they're, like Marie says, they're impressions. I might smell a particular note and then realize when I look at the formula that there is nothing in it that, so like I think I like the idea of describing it in terms of an impression of things, because, as you well know, and being interacting with so many people who are into perfume, for a lot of perfumes, people smell different things. Things stand
Yeah.
out a little bit more than others. So like even between the two of us, when we're smelling the same perfume, like what comes into it as well is personal associations with different scent profiles and that, like, Marie's got a whole idea behind food, and whereas when I smell it, it gives me a completely unique set of visuals or experiences. And I mean, obviously this occurs with everybody, with every different perfume. We're never going to interact the same with exactly the same with one perfume. So not like going back to no pyramids. Yeah, it's a very good basic guide for anyone who's never heard anything about the perfume to go, okay, well, this is in it, this is in it. And it might prompt them to want to try it. But even in my personal experience, I've deliberately avoided trying some perfumes because I didn't like the look of the note pyramid. But then when I have tried them, I've gone, where have you been all my life? And the note pyramid was the reason I avoided it. It's like a really bad Tinder profile pic. Like, so.
But that being said, and I'm not claiming that we found the best way to do this, but how else do you do it? You know what I mean? I think to me, and I know I've said this before, but I think to me is times like this, when you get to chat perfume and your own impressions with other people. So I think this is where reviewers are super important, especially when you watch a lot of them and that you find one that has similar taste to you. So I think this is why this community is actually really important. But to me, this is the closest you would get to you actually smelling it yourself. There's no description, however smart you think you are, that will actually make it feel the same way that if you are smelling it yourself. And I think this is the closest thing you can get to is find your reviewer soulmate, and that's it.
Right. Finding somebody who seems to articulate fragrance in a unique way and is able to pick up on things without necessarily leaning too much on information that's already provided to them as a crutch, to kind of think outside of it, much like your process and the process of a lot of great perfumers, both self-taught and otherwise, to have that ability to kind of think out of the constraints of what is presented to them on paper, if you will, or what is on Fragrantica, or to get out of the sort of the formulaic kind of reviewing. It's hard to not to lean on that stuff, but to like you said, Pep, to just go into it blindly is sometimes like the best thing, and then you can kind of compare notes afterwards. Like I did that with some first impressions on previous streams, and it's fascinating what I'll pick up, and some of it will align, and then other things it's just that's my own very own impression. It's not there in the notes pyramid. It's unique to me. So yeah, I think it's important for people to mindfully take in a fragrance and not concern themselves so much as to whether or not they do smell something that's there or they don't smell something that they should be smelling, but what is it that they are experiencing? What are their what are they taking in? Yeah, for sure.
There's nothing I love more than to smell both raw material and perfume blindly. Like I think this is the funnest thing to do, and I've had like such good laugh of having people send me like only numbered samples and smelling this. And when I discovered what it was, I was like, pissing myself pretty much, because I'm like, I would have never ever guessed that this was an amouage in particular that I have in mind. Like I don't know which one it was, but I think it was in the tobacco, like the library line, like the tobacco one. I don't remember how it's called. And literally, when I smelled it, I laughed so much because it was such a joyous, fun, kind of childish perfume. And when I learned it was Amouage, I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, this is the best. But I would have
Isn't that a
never guessed.
trip?
Yeah,
That's such
but you know, I would have
yeah.
had a completely different expectations from the perfume. Would I have known it was Amouage first? And this to me this is what perfume is about. It takes you places, and it's not you're. Of course, you're wearing it for other people, but it's a thing for you. And this goes back to the what I wrote on the website. There are stories you tell yourself. It's about you, the own little fancy, weird world that you want to live in. So it doesn't matter the no pyramids. Doesn't matter the marketing. It's all crap. Like, how do you
Yeah.
feel about it? Period. You like it? Good. You don't like it? Good. That's it. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's important not to allow that to get in the way of, you know, just it's like what Pep said. Sometimes there's going to be notes like take for example oud. I have such a tough time when I see oud in a notes breakdown, because I've already had it set in my mind it's going to be something so predictable because I've smelled these accords over and over again. And then sometimes I'll smell something and not knowing what the breakdown is, and I'm like, there's an oud note. Like, it's like my mind can't. It's kind of like cognitive dissonance. It's like, but I don't pick it up. I wish it wasn't there. Like, I wish it wasn't in the pyramid. But you know, it's testament to that. It's like what I say to people also when they say like, I don't like patchouli. Well, I have some news because it's kind of like those notes that are hard to escape. So when we reduce it to just notes, you know, something that you know that might be in the breakdown, and we write something off, we could be missing out on something that could be one of our favorite fragrances. So, oh, hey, Henna, great to see
Hi,
you.
Hannah.
And we are Sentient. One of our resident moderators here is reminding you, if you haven't hit the like button, please do so. Thank you very much. And Pat Lester, hello. Good to see you. And yeah. So what are some of your favorite materials to work with? Would you be willing to disclose some of that?
Yeah, of course. Every time I get that question, I get a bit anxious. It changes every day, I think, or depending on what I'm working on. I always have like new favorites of things. I'm like, well, this is absolutely beautiful. I can't get enough of it. I mean, we discussed it also in our live with Pep, so I don't mind saying this, but right now I have a big crush on Bloom Absolute, which is also called Genet Absolute.
Love it.
Jay, by the way, I still need to send you some. It's absolutely spectacular. For the people who do not smell this before, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a honey, wildflower, yellow flower, pollen. It's just so luminous and chewy and enveloping. It's just absolutely beautiful. I cannot get enough of it. I want to drink this stuff.
Yeah, Genet Absolute is one of the most beautiful materials, actually one of my favorites. And I have these old books, the Louis Appel books, and some of these like old bases, and it's amazing how often they'd be used. The Genet Absolute would be used in accords. Like this is this tulip base that you could create, and like a large amount of it is the Genet Absolute. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful stuff. And so for those who are tuned in, Genet or broom, you may be familiar. There is one type of broom, the Spanish broom, the bright yellow flowers, and it's unfortunately an invasive species here in North America. It's in the same family. I think it is a flower in the legume family because it has that legume look to it. But yeah, very nice. What else? Tell us, what are some of your other favorites?
Okay, I'm trying to go through a mental list of things. It's so hard. Okay, in the naturals, I think like a lot of the classic ones, like a really good vetiver, for example, but a really good one, or even a good patchouli. I never get tired of the classics like this. I think they're like a good patchouli is like please draw me in it. Like I love it.
Yeah.
Maybe then things that are a bit different but still beautiful. Like just a really, I'm gonna be so boring. Sorry, I said vetiver patchouli, and I'm gonna add a good vanilla absolute to this.
I'm gonna butt in now, Marie, because you're not even talking about some of the frankincense that you sent me.
Oh yes! Oh my
Oh,
God!
please, let's talk about that because I have a huge love for frankincense and olivine resin. Yeah.
I mean, this is it can lead to another discussion after, but I have a wonderful tiny little producer in Germany that actually has friends and family in Oman, and he goes to Oman and he goes like harvest the tears with his family and with his friends, and he brings back the Olibanum to Germany, like the different grades, the different region, and he distills it himself. But because he's so small and he has such a small production, damn him, he's never done like all the paperwork that goes with it. So all the technical sheets and the safety data sheets and the IFRA certificates and everything that you need to actually, when you do perfumes and you need to submit for safety assessment. But his aluminum are, I don't, like they blew my mind the first time I smelled them. I smelled them blindly as well. Like you just sent me a batch. I didn't look at the name and I was just smelling them. And some of them were like so ambery, orangey, almost aldehydic. It's almost like I was smelling Sevilla Lobe, like in a Lebanon form. It was just so beautiful. Another one was like blueberries and flowers. And anyways, it's just fantastic stuff that I cannot use in my perfume, but it's absolutely brilliant.
Pep and I do share a love for Sevilla Lobe. That's one of the best to have come out of L'Artisan Parfumier. Is that still in production? I hope it's still in production.
It's been discontinued.
Oh, good grief!
Yeah.
All right.
Pep is very sad about it.
Oh, well, rightfully so. My goodness. And yet they keep some of the tepid ones still in production. There's some that like, oh, no, I'm not going to get started about that, but it's so gorgeous. But so many different types of aluminum too. I mean, I'm just Boswellia sacra, Boswellia serrata, Boswellia ferriana. So like people don't realize there's all these different botanical, varieties and that have all these different profiles, kind of like the orchids I was talking about earlier, with all the smells of the orchids, all these different frankincense resins with different scent profiles. It's remarkable. Would we see, and I don't doubt that there may be some of it involved in some of your perfumery, maybe in a subtle manner, but will we see something that is a bit more incense forward in the future?
Jesus. So this is my
you've hit a very tender spot here, JJ.
Seems I have a tendency to do that.
It's all right. Yeah, I don't know how many hundreds of versions I have of one incense perfume that I'm trying to create since even before Pep. And Pep smelled various versions of it, and I've never been satisfied with any of them. I will one day, but in the meantime, I'm gonna make like shameless publicity for another perfumer and tell you about the most remarkable incense perfume I smelled, Alexandre. Go for it.
I already know what you're going to say.
It.
No. I'm sure Marie is going to mention, and I've mentioned it before. But we smelled Gilded by Eau de Bougie Pierre Long, who is the perfumer. This is the most instantly my favorite incense perfume. And it's not just an incense perfume, but I think I think Marie and I looked at each other when we smelled it and had exactly the same thought that we wish we created this.
Yeah, so this is the perfume I was trying to create for the past 5 years. So she made it, so I need to do something different, but it's spectacular. You all need to blind buy it when it comes out if you love incense. And trust me, I'm not kidding. It's amazing.
I'll do a review of it soon.
Pia's actually going to be with us next week.
Then you tell her about it.
Yeah.
Ask her.
I shall. Oh, wow. And I am a huge incense fiend, so I have a lot of them. And I'd love to smell her stuff as well, her work. Wow. Incredible. But I still want to experience your interpretation of an incense at some point in the future, but I'll be patient.
Don't hold your breath.
I won't hold my breath, but, you know, one day I would love to.
It'll happen. It'll happen.
I promise.
So I wanted to also sort of get into just the world of indie perfume in general.
Oh.
And we chatted a little bit about this, that there seems to be not so much a cohesive community amongst the indies. That, you know, because, you know, indie perfumers are often self-taught. They may have mentors. They may have people adjacent to them who have gone to school, but they haven't. So I want to talk a little bit about that and just sort of your thoughts on, you know, the indie realm and having spaces and, you know, sharing and that sort of stuff. Could you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's pretty much what you said, right? So a lot of indies are coming from different backgrounds, and it's like anything. Like, where do you meet people to form a community in life? Like, usually it's at work, in a place of work, or because you're in some ways, like, not necessarily in the guilds, but, you know, you have contacts in your world. And from the design world, it used to be like that. There was like the IXDA and like things that would bring you together. And I think for indie perfumer, it's super hard to get into like the international, you know, perfumers, whatever, how it's called. So you end up being kind of alone, and hence why for me it was so important to have Pep work with me, because, you know, if you're alone all the time, like it's really hard. It gets really much like an echo chamber. You're not really sure, you know, not just about what you're creating, but also like everything that's around it, how you're talking about it, how you're kind of marketing yourself. So it's so important that you have people around you. And then comes like the hard part, which is knowing how to run a freaking business in this industry, which is extremely hard and extremely not made for small businesses and small brands like ours. So there's no really, except if you reach out to people directly, which I've done a lot, and I'm sure I've been really annoying to some people, but some people were kind enough to respond and, you know, became sort of friends over time. You're stuck alone, which is too bad, because there's so many things that would have helped me, would I have known, you know, that I had to find out the hard way, making mistakes, and, you know, but also it's part of the journey. I'm not complaining, but it would have been great to have people to ask, like a mentor, things like this. But how do you freaking meet them? During COVID on top of it.
Right.
You know?
Have you explored different possible solutions to that? You know, some ways to bridge, you know, members of this sort of disjointed community?
I mean, yes, I've had ideas, but, you know, between me in my kitchen thinking of ideas and actually doing them with enough people, I think there is like a bit of a distance that I still need to bridge. I think for me, like, so far, it's been two things. So first, I think it's a bit slow, but the Perfumery Code of Ethic is actually kind of a nice place to gather similar-minded people, not just perfumer, but people that are writing and reviewing and even retailers and like people in the other industry. I think that can all help each other instead of trying to be weirdly in competition, especially perfumers. Like, ew, no.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe the other one is Excel and going to these places because you meet a lot of great humans there as well. And you kind of realize, even having a chat, like I had a great chat with Pia while I was there. Like she just blew my mind and she's such a sweetheart. And it was so nice to see like a lot of things I feel or a lot of things I feel and went through. She's like, yeah, I've been there, done that. Like, you'll be fine. Like, just to have someone say that to me, I was like, oh my God, can I hug you? You know? So I think just
Right.
meeting people in person in these events are the
That would
second
be.
best thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess short of that, having as many, forums and opportunities for people to congregate, online in more meaningful ways. Pep, do you see that there is this potential for it to move in a more positive direction as far as that?
I'd like to think so. And just going back to being at Exance, it's like before I went this year, I think, and it was Marie's first time as well. It would have been very easy for me to be cynical about going to a thing like that before I went, and it's only because of probably stuff I'd seen on social media beforehand. Being about influencers being there and all the things that went on there. But what I quickly found out when I was there, and I know obviously Alex, Perfume Temple, was there as well, maybe a couple of others in the chat might have been there, is that the best thing about being in a place like that is actually meeting like-minded people, people who think the same way, and having a chance to have those talks and realizing, like Marie said, that you aren't actually alone. I mean, yes, that event in particular is, you basically need to have money to make the most of that event. But being there, the advantage of being there as an attending it, is that you get the chance to meet people, you get the chance to talk to people, and then realize that you're not necessarily swimming upstream all the time. That there are people. You're not doing it alone. Essentially, there are people that can help. There are people that can offer advice, and then you also realize that being on social media can almost make you forget that some people are humans.
Exactly.
That's a really strange thing to say, but you do realize that they have the same struggles. I'm probably getting a little bit too deep into this, but to answer your question, yes, I think that there's definitely a space that can be filled there for particularly smaller indies who can support each other, whatever you want to call it, whether it be like some kind of co-op or something really informal where and it's not a matter either of being of separating yourself from the whole perfume industry. It's just accepting that indies have a certain set of disadvantages to bigger houses and brands, but in the same breath, they've also got some advantages in that they don't necessarily are necessarily restricted by some of the things that bigger brands are restricted by. Like some brands, face a lot of pressure to make sure they're on trend with the market, whereas indies maybe don't, and they can be more creative and more original with what they're putting out there.
Mm.
And it's not like we can't follow the rules either, because you just have to talk to Marie about all the paperwork, safety regulations she has to go through. I don't know if it's a European thing specifically compared to somewhere like the US, but you know, you can be guaranteed that we cannot sell Miskeo perfumes unless this is done, and they're safe. They're as safe as anything else on on the market. Everything, all the proportions of materials that are being used are within regulatory limits. So, yes, definitely, like indie perfume as a cohort, there can be room for growth and definitely room for originality, and hopefully it happens, and I'll support it. Did I
Josie,
even answer your question?
I think you did.
I'll shut up now.
No. This is the right place to talk. I like to give people a voice, and I want them to use it here. Josie just says hello to both of us here. I had this starred from earlier from our good friend Alex, asking me here, do I get in? Oh,
Hi, Alex.
Trying this again. Few or fouille? Feuille.
Bravo. Perfect.
Why on earth? There's some French words that I have down pat, and there's something about this one.
Just say it like a Frenchman with attitude. Feuille.
Exactly. It's not your fault. It's French fault.
I'll spell it in a way that I think it should be pronounced, with an Y-E-U-X instead of how it's spelled.
That's it.
Feuille. Okay. So Alex asked me if I find something in common between Feuille and Dior Dune and Miles Synthetic Jungle. In a way, yeah. I mean, definitely the sharp, bracing, electric greenness of Synthetic Jungle, which we do find in nature, and the weeds and the wildflowers and all the detritus and the meadows and the grasses and everything. And then there is a bit of that quality from Dior Dune where it's kind of solar, it's kind of sunny, it's kind of warm, a bit gritty and a little ambery as well. So yeah, I could see that. Yeah, for sure. I need to spend more intimate time with it. I've worn it a couple of times, and as I said, so far I'm loving it. Maybe my second purchase. Back to the chat, though. Okay, thank you very much, Alex. We do actually have a question from my good friend John. John Beeble has tuned in here, and he does have a question for the two of you. He'd love to hear from both of you about the benefits of your collaborative process.
Do you want to go first, though?
Yeah, well, I'll answer it in this way. Hi, John, by the way. When we were at Exance, we actually attended a panel with different perfumers. We had a couple of indie perfumers and a couple of perfumers that worked with 4 bigger fragrance houses. I think Marne was one of them. One of the perfumers on the panel, I forget their name now, was talking about the fact that they worked with evaluators. That's the bulk of what I have done with Marie, and what it confirmed to me was that whether you're working for a big fragrance house or you're in your bedroom messing around with oils and materials, you still need someone. You kind of have to be able to step away from the little box that you're working in, and even perfumers, trained perfumers that have been doing it for years still rely a lot on evaluators to keep them, to basically, I mean, it could be as simple as making sure that they're still keeping in line with the particular brief that they started working on. So I see, and I hope Marie sees it the same way. I see my role really as making sure that she's getting an outside perspective, because like a lot of artists, not just perfumers, like whether you're a musician or you're a painter or a writer, you can get really in the weeds with your work, and sometimes you need someone to pull you out of there and make you realize there's a beautiful forest around those weeds. So I hope that that's the benefit that I bring to me. Like, the benefit for me, I guess, is that I've learned so much about the actual process of making a perfume through working with her, and it's just informed the way I talk about and look at perfumes as well.
I mean, maybe to add a little bit to this, because it's exactly that. Like, to me, is to have at hand, like, someone that gives me a very different perspective than my own and allows me to zoom out a little bit and see the big picture. And I guess that is like extremely knowledgeable in perfumes that are happening. Like, I don't get to smell a lot of new stuff so often. Like, I try, but it's hard to keep up, especially because I have my own stuff to do. So having someone that can compare to what's going on, or, you know, has access to different perfumes that I don't have access to kind of say, like, okay, this is similar to this and that in structure or in notes or in accords or in story or even in marketing. I think it's kind of like a little bit like a, you know, like a chef d'orchestre or a producer, if you want. So I think for me, having this kind of allows me to concentrate on what I have to do, which is to create stuff. Yeah, so I think that's been super helpful, and I think, like, reverse the benefit, you know, for him, hopefully, is that, you know, you've kind of, you know, understood what's under the hood, like all the complexity of creating something from scratch, and also maybe a little bit about, you know, what are the materials doing? You know, when you put things in perfume, and JJ, if you've dabbled also, like, you know,
Yeah.
It's such a strange thing to at some point start really seeing magic happen between materials that are not what they are out, you know, straight from the box. So
Right.
yeah, I'm curious if John, you're working with some sort of evaluator or feedback provider somewhere. I'm throwing back the question at you.
John, if you're there, do you have an evaluator? Do you need an evaluator? I just wanted to take this time for just a moment to ask some of our folks who are tuned in to like the stream. We are currently at, from what it looks like, 26 likes. We have 36 people tuned in. Please like. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. You can hit the bell button. You can get more notifications on further Effluvium live streams. We have P Along next week. We have Roberto Dario and Diane St. Clair the week following. And then we have our finale on, I believe, May 30th. I don't know. I'll get you the dates later on. Also, if you could buy me a coffee, or one or two or three or four or five, a coffee is $5 each. So if you're going to Starbucks every day, hey, you know, you're already spending that much on coffee. There is going to be actually one more grab bag, a mystery grab bag of 4 things that I have doubles of. So 4 full bottles from my collection, doubles, plus a sample pack. If you are in the US and you contribute $50 to buy me a coffee, or that's 10 coffees. 10 coffees will get you a 4-bottle mystery grab bag with a sample pack. So check that out, www.buymeacoffee.com/Joseph Kolb P, or you could just donate $5 or one coffee, two coffees, whatever you can afford, whatever you're willing to give, it's all appreciated. Or alternatively, if you don't want to do buy me a coffee, there's super chats, super stickers, and all that sort of stuff to help support this channel, which is continuing to grow day by day. I have more guests coming up in the pipeline, more events, more streams, even during our summer sessions. So just wanted to take a little bit of time for that. We're going to do a very brief intermission, and we will be right back. And if folks are familiar with our intermission, don't worry, I'm not trying to hypnotize you. It's more of a little moment for meditation. We're going to bring that in just a second here. Okay. And please enjoy. We'll be right back with you, folks. All right, that conclude. Look at Pep. Getting a little too artsy fartsy for you.
No.
I just like a little palate cleanser, you know, something to kind of help us reset and regroup. It's becoming a little bit of a tradition on Effluvium. It's kind of a good way to kind of move into the next part 2 of Effluvium. So we were talking a little bit about some of the struggles of indies, and things like events like Exxon's. I mean, the pricey booths, the inaccessibility. I personally would love to see something that is a bit more accessible. You know, I think the one qualm that I have is that there's many people in the fragrance community, whether they are content creators or writers or simply enthusiasts, who may not have the means to take part in those kinds of events. And what could we do that could be a little bit more accessible? You know, I don't know. Pep seems to. I see the gears turning with Pep there right now. I see something. Are there some?
This is all superficial. There's not much going on.
That is utter nonsense. I know you're a smart guy.
Don't believe him one bit.
No way. No way.
Look, there's definitely a way that you could do something more accessible. I mean, you're still talking about having a physical location, because unfortunately, you know, to smell things, you got to be there to smell it. We can't send smells over the internet, but certainly there is space to have something similar to Exons, but maybe have an accessible version that's only open to and I'm just talking, for example, only open to indie brands that are owned by the one person rather than, you know, a conglomerate company, where you can rent a space, have them all in there, and basically it's one way of promoting work that's coming from that sector of the fragrance market. I mean, it still has to be somewhere, and you still have to get people to come to it. But I'm sure that things like Exons and Pity all started off small to begin with.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm wrong, but there's no reason why something like that can't happen, except I really haven't thought about the detail too much.
I mean, so a few weeks ago, you had James from Filigree and Shadow invited
Yes.
to Effluvium, right?
Yes.
And I adore him. I think he's a brilliant person. And he does something
He
that he
is.
mentioned on your show that whenever my freaking studio is ready, I really want to do the same, which is he literally has samples of other perfume brands that he really loves in his shop. So when people come, it's there, not only his stuff, but other people's. And not just like friends or people that he knows, like just literally perfumes that he thinks are good. Um, and this is like what I envision my life as a nice person to be in the future is to do exactly the same thing. And what if you scale this up instead and you have, you know, a network of people that are all kind of smallish, that we're not in a lot of retailers just yet. And you just do this, like just host your friends and other indie perfumers perfume. Like, why would you? Like, I want other people like me to succeed. Like, I'm not in competition with any of these brands. I think they're amazing. And I also know how hard it is, you know? So I think it's just, there is definitely a space for more punk approach to perfume and stop taking this so seriously. Like we don't need all the big fancy shops. Like it's nice and I love going into those. Like and I spent, you know, the past 25 years of my life into these fancy shops, but it can be done differently. And I think it's just because, you know, like everything else in capitalism, because it's always been done this way. We continue doing it this way, but we don't have to, you know. In the end, I think it just takes a few people to be like, screw this, I'm doing it different and just do it in the end. So yeah, there are ways. It's just someone needs to do it. Except for James, he's already doing it.
You're on mute, JJ.
Hi. No, I really do admire James a great deal, and oh, what a sense of humor on that guy! Oh my god,
Yeah.
he is a riot. John actually did respond here. Interesting question. Thank you both so much for that answer. It was so helpful. I will often give things for people to smell, and they offer a lot of feedback. So informally, yes, it happens. I guess I am, and informally, one of his evaluators. I've helped evaluate some things for him. So. Very cool. All right.
You can reach out, John, if you want to chat to either me or Pep. Be my pleasure.
And here, Pep, please consider airflow. I went to a shop the other day. The place was so saturated with smells. It was so hard to handle.
You would have not liked Excellence, I can tell you this.
Well, I mentioned, Donna has said to me, more than once that it reeked of guaiacol and ambrox everywhere. It was just this miasma of like strong, like
Miasma is a perfect thing.
heavy molecules.
Particularly around certain stands, like not the whole place. So.
Certain ones.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at
and
that.
yes, Hannah, they just had the scent fair in LA for Scent Week. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. And John was just out there for Scent Week. And then there's also Glamcation in California for American indie brands. Alex mentions that. Very cool. Okay. So, Marie, I'm going to pick your brain on some of the influences in perfumery. Some of your favorite perfumes, that have, whether or not they've inspired you in your own work, but just your personal loves. Would you mind sharing some of them with us?
I'm gonna go with a few. I don't want to bore you with all of this, but I think, like I mention this every time I talk about this because it really influenced a lot Distill, which is the original 80s Poison. Dior Poison, like the OG from the 80s, not what has been done to it since then. It was my first love, and I was, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years old, and I was completely fascinated. And I think I still love it in some ways. I think it's just, it reminds me so much of my mom and being a kid and just discovering perfume for the first time and being like, this is incredible. Um, and also all the perfumes from that era. I think they all do something to me, even if it's wrong. Like the original Fahrenheit as well. Like I remember when my mom first brought it at home as well. Like I had a mini, which unfortunately I don't have anymore. Like I should have kept that mini. And I know, and I've worn it a couple of times actually. It's a really nice perfume on me, or maybe not every woman, but on me it was really nice. And all the other ones like Obsession and Giorgio and all the big ones. Not
Mm.
favorites, but for sure Poison is. Um, I mean, again, it's like raw materials. I don't know. I've worn so many things over time. Things that I cannot go without. Mm, very cheesy, but I don't care. The Gucci by Gucci is still one of my favorite. I think it's just a beautiful, sexy, sweet perfume, and I love it. I don't care what anyone says. Um, I love incense a lot, same as you. So Avignon is one of my favorite. I think it's still really pretty, but I also have one that I don't even know the name of because I bought in a really small shop somewhere in Rome. And actually, I bought it and I thought it was going to be a gimmick, but it smells so divine. It's supposed to smell like the churches in Rome, and it actually does. And it's spectacular. I don't know if the label is still on my bottle because I bought this like 8, 9 years ago. If I find it, I will send you a little sampler your way, JJ. I think you're gonna like this one. Um, yeah, please interrupt me because I can keep on.
No, that's okay. I think that was a very good answer for sure. We have Rafi here. Good morning, Rafi. Good to see you. So, Pep, what's on your mind? We're gonna get back to you here. What are some things that you need to get off your chest?
That's
this is
that's
this
a
is
this is a really dangerous question to be asking me.
this is a safe space for that though. Like,
I
I mean, it's just
I
some.
actually I'm not as angry as I used to be, JJ. Like I've become a lot more zen and calm and at peace with the fragrance world, to be honest. um, I
I'm
don't.
working on it. I'm working on
Yeah.
it. I've had some speed bumps, that's for sure. And I'm working on it. I think part of it is putting together something like this has really sort of channeled my energy. So I think that's really helped a great deal. Um, and just trying to be a little bit more optimistic on the direction of things. I think be the change you want to see, as much as cliched as that might be, is what I'm trying to do. Yeah. But it's still difficult to not be a little cynical about the way that the commercial perfumery is becoming, and I try to look at it this way, and this is why my mission, which was not one when I started this season of Effluvium, the YouTube season versus the Instagram one, where I was just getting my footing and figuring out what in the world I was doing when I was starting on Instagram. But in this season, I didn't even have this in mind. And then eventually it just sort of happened that I wanted to host as many independent perfumers as I could, because I think that that's where it's at. That's where it's at right now.
I'm just on that too, and also going back to Exance. I will just say that that I didn't get to smell everything at every single stand at Exance, even though I went there. Like I was there all 4 days, and some people like Alex and Dana probably smelled a lot more than I did over the 4 days. But of everything that I did smell there, like there were, literally only two or three actually memorable perfumes that I remember smelling there out of the hundreds that I did smell. So that kind of tells you a little bit about where everything's at, and the stuff that was memorable came from smaller brands, smaller houses, and that also tells you a lot. So I could have definitely missed something that was outstanding, but like I did smell that Meo Fushini that you smelled at the beginning, and I thought that was really good too. Of all those art and olfaction finalists, I like that one in particular. And obviously Pierre's Pierre and Nick's perfumes. I did like some of the Rubini perfumes. I forget his name, from Greece. Yes, his perfumes were excellent as well. So they're the ones I remember from 4 days of smelling. But it kind of told me something about the overall state of, all the other perfumes that were there. I'm probably being a bit critical, but that's it.
No, I don't think so at all. It's there's a reason why like the really big companies and corporations of this world are creating niche indie brands. It's because they think this is what people want, but they don't make the actual artistry that goes into the bottle. Right. And there was quite a bit of that at Excellence as well. Like, I don't know at what point you're indie. Like, I'm indie. No one fucking tells me what to do. Period. Not even Pep. I love you, and you can critique and give me feedback. I do what I do. That's independent. That's the definition of the word independent.
Right.
That's period. There's nothing else. So this is what independent perfumery is. It's not having a backing of like, a solid partner that's giving you hundreds of thousands of dollars to do like the fancy luxury bottles and spray and marketing. I certainly don't have that. And I'm pretty sure Chronotone doesn't have that. James at Filigree doesn't have that. Diane St. Clair doesn't have that. Like, we're indie. That's indie.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my. I'm gonna get off the podium now. So.
Rant over.
I do not police tone in this environment. I think it is important.
She hasn't said the word fuck enough in this stream. I'm just telling you.
I've only said it once now, so that's pretty good.
We could add some more fucks with Alex, because he seems to be. Alex could be our fill-in fourth moderator. I could make him a moderator too. I think I could trust him with that. But our fourth panelist, Rachel, was unable to make it due to a car issue. She was supposed to be our fourth. Why do I keep wanting to say moderator? Our fourth panelist. But Alex, if you do express an interest, just let me know, and I can share the link with you privately. I don't publicly share the link to join the stream. Okay, so there's some side chats here. I love the enthusiasm for vintages going on here, discussing Tuscany, Aramis Tuscany, Aramis 900, some favorites there. Love seeing that kind of conversation. Yeah, I think that, the thing that's very frustrating to me is the way that the idea of niche perfume is changing. The definition of niche has become so meaningless now, because at least in terms of perfume, in general conversation, for something to be a niche is to appeal to somebody, a smaller audience that appreciates maybe something a little bit more artistic or complex. Something that has, whether it's an attention to materials or an attention to concepts. That's another thing. And I remember Donna was pointing this out in one of her recent streams, the lack of concept, the lack of identity, the lack of what are you all about besides trying to make some good old money? Some of these brands, they're very fancy and flashy, and they have a lot of packaging and promotion and presentation, glamour, but no concept. And that's another thing where I'm finding that's you're finding that more with indies. Indies are feeling are really living up to the concept of niche, of the idea of niche in fragrance, more so than a lot of the, these juggernaut niche brands, like like it used to be the L'Artisans and the Serge Lutens and the so on and so forth, and either they're sort of atrophying or they're getting bought by a corporate consolidation and the dilution and all that, and then we have these new niche brands, and the authenticity seems to be lacking. It just seems like it's, you look at designers forget about it. It's like that's like a whole other thing altogether, where you're just not going to find very much in the way of perfume as it used to be in the designer realm, in the department store realm. It's just never going to be that way. And whatever used to be designer is kind of becoming niche. There's a lot of things changing, and it's confusing.
I think Josie comment there sort of hits the nail on the head, because a lot of what calls itself niche perfumery is really just about this. And again, this could be a very cynical thing to say, but like some perfume brands price themselves purely to give the perception of luxury, has nothing to do with the cost of their packaging, the cost of the materials they're using. They say, well, people will think that this is good because it costs this much, is essentially what that mindset is. Without, obviously, it's easy to think of different brands that might be doing this, but there's no way. And Marie knows as well as anyone how much materials costs. The fact that for indies, materials cost more because they can't order in the bulk and quantity that bigger brands can. So you just have to look at how some indie brands price themselves what I think very reasonably, and then you look at some slightly bigger brands and you wonder why does this cost $500? Like, it makes this. I mean, it's probably obvious to a lot of people. This is basically marketing.
Yeah, market it. Yeah, I think that Josie hit the nail on the head. Luxury is the concept, but it's such a two-dimensional kind of concept to me. Here I am, like a hot take on this. Like, it doesn't resonate with me. It's. But who is it? Right? I don't know where this is headed, but it just seems like conspicuous consumption is becoming more about the conspicuous consumption than actually even the quality and the content that makes it luxurious. It's like cheap with it. It's like get the gilded lily. It's yeah. Go ahead, Marie.
I was gonna say, like, to me, I find it vulgar more than anything else. Like, someone that needs to scream that they're expensive, like, they're not. This is just vulgar.
Yeah.
So it's anything but luxurious. Like, the notion of luxury, like, there's a refinement in there, and then it's like that kind of, I don't know, warm feeling you get when you're entering a space where you're the lead role, if you want, right? Where you're the most important person, and this is just like, you're saying, like, it makes you feel cheap. It's like, I just feel like I've been had. Like, I gave you $400 for something that smells like everyone else. It's just like, bleh. Of course you feel cheap. This is the opposite of luxury. This is vulgar to me. Like, to treat people this way. And I mean, I feel sorry for people that will go and buy those bottles. Like, I understand why too. Like this, the principle of wanting to treat yourself, and this is something that all the big houses have been doing forever, which is, please try to find a designer brand that's from a perfume house, except Guerlain, like none. Who else? Please, Guerlain. That's it. Like everyone else is fashion. So they've all done these perfumes and fancy sunglasses and bags because it was more affordable luxury for the small peasants that we are.
Yeah. There's very
It's
few
really
that are
sad,
It is. There's very few perfume houses that were perfume houses from the very beginning. The Guerlain and Caron. Caron is still Houbigant, but Houbigant is kind of confusing too. Coty, Coty is a thing of, we can't take Coty seriously today because they basically became sort of basically just in name only, What do you folks think of Les Indémodables as a house?
I've only tried one of them, JJ, and that's Musc de Sable, and I quite like it. It's I've tested it a few times. I haven't tried any of the other popular ones. I think it's nice. I have no idea off the top of my head what a bottle would cost. So, it's probably not something that I would get a bottle of, even though I like it, but it seems okay.
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say the only one I found is the Fougère one. Is it Fougère Emerald?
Emerald, yeah. Which reminds me too much of Coty Emerald. Like when I hear
Emerald, nice enough. I wasn't blown away.
Yeah, that wasn't my favorite. Yeah. I do really appreciate 3 of them, and I do have bottles of 3 of them. And one of them was Mousse de Sable, Ambre Serein, and Oriental Velour. It's not, I definitely wouldn't be a completist and get every single one of them. I mean, some of them, all of them are excellently executed. I think Antoine Lee is quite a talented perfumer. Vanille Havane is definitely the breadwinner. We know that they had to have the prolific that you have a vanilla tobacco is going to please the crowd today. That's been a popular sort of trope for a while in perfume. But I think all in all, in comparison to some other niche houses, I think it has it's reputable. Is the hype warranted? Depends on what it is. As a full house, are every one of them knockouts? I don't think so. I think that they range from brilliant to relatively well done. So that's my hot take on that too. Like Josie said, I love most from Les Indémodables. That's a very diplomatic way of saying it. Ravi asked, he only caught up the end bit of the Italian church scent, and he was asking about Filippo Scentinel, but
no, I'm so sorry. Like it's from, and I don't even know. Like I could go get my bottle. It's like a small shop I found in Rome somewhere, and she has like a lot of them. And maybe it's a bit of a gimmick, but it literally smells like a church in Rome. It's amazing. I can maybe send it to you, JJ, if you want to put it in the comments or in the description tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Once you update, I'll add that to the description of the archive live stream. Tripler says Darren also does a great job of conveying his concepts on his website. It makes you want to try everything Darren Ellena Parfums. Another great perfumer, great indie perfumer. For sure. Luxury is high quality and understatement. Gaudy products aren't luxury. Bling is not luxury. I feel like the whole phenomenon of bling corresponds with this age of, bloated, conspicuous consumption without regard to the poshness and getting to the finer detail of it. It's just more the flash. That's why bling always comes to mind to me. Blingy bottles. Yes.
And just on Alex's comment,
yes.
it did remind me as well that compared to other products, like it's probably a lot easier to see the quality in a piece of clothing or furniture or other physical thing.
So
When
true.
it comes to perfume, you often hear people talk about, well, this smells like quality ingredients. My question is, how the fuck would you know if it is? And you're not wrong, because your nose tells you what you like, but there's no way that if I'm smelling something and I say, oh, this smells like quality ingredients, it's only because I am like really agreeing with what I'm smelling and it's really good to my nose and to my brain. But there's no way that I can smell two perfumes and say that the ingredients in this one are better quality than the ingredients in this one. Like, you can give me the most expensive raw materials right now, I'm still going to make a shit perfume.
Right. And plenty of people are doing that with wonderful materials, and they throw them together. They mix them up into a bit of a mess of incongruous, dissonant weirdness, and things just don't seem fully realized. And it's and then and some gripes of indie perfumers who are really disciplined and dedicated to their craft. There's some there are some people, the ability to be an indie perfumer, much like a musician, you just throw something together and say, I've done it. I've made it. I made a perfume and I'm going to sell it and I'm going to charge good money for it. Quality is an interesting concept. It's construct, actually.
Yeah.
It all depends on culturally and socially. It depends on what milieu you are from, what is within your access, whether you can afford it, whether it's accessible. There are all of these subjective things that come into the whole concept of quality, but there's no defining characteristic. And I think that quality, it kind of ends up becoming sort of a loaded term and within itself too, because it's like, what is it? It's like what Keith says, smell wise, it's hard to describe what luxurious is. It's all it's all a matter of perception,
I mean, to me, what comes to mind when you were talking just now, it kind of, maybe this is why people make such a big deal with projection and how long it lasts. Because what else can you really comment on? Really?
Right.
You know what I mean? And
it's the only thing you can measure.
Yes. That's the only thing you can measure, because you have no idea of the ingredients that are in there. And even if you knew, like, how would you know, like, this is expensive? So I guess maybe we've just cracked the problem of the century in perfumery. It's like why people mind so much this. Yeah, because they need quality, and that's how it is, and that's it.
Well, that ends up being the parameters of quality for a lot of people. It's it's treated as though it serves this more practical function. We're talking perfume, people. It transcends practicality. It isn't. It doesn't. It's not like a vehicle. It's not like it's not even like a watch. It's not something that. Its very nature is it's not meant to have ongoing dividends. It's meant to disappear.
Are you telling me this is not going to help me seduce women?
That has everything to do with whether or not you can actually connect with a woman, no matter whether or not you're wearing a fragrance or not, or whatever clothes you're wearing or not, or vehicle that you're driving or not. It's just, insert, fill in the blank here, and it just becomes perfume. Becomes perfume. Will this perfume get me validation and attention, and I've called it the results driven approach. But when it's it has its place. Every even like other forms of art are treated that way. Think of somebody who's like, I could do that. When they go into a museum and say like, what is this all about? I don't get it. I could do that. But you didn't. You didn't do that. So ask yourself, why did that artist do that? Why did they do that? The purpose of art isn't just to look pretty and to be passive necessarily and to do all the work for you. My favorite perfumes, whether it's a drugstore perfume that is, from another time, totally out of step with time, or an indie perfume from today, is it makes me think. It makes me want to examine. And I think that's kind of like, oh, that's a little too intellectual for me. I just want to get laid. I just want to get laid. That's all. I'm not asking for too much. So Rudy says, you want luxury, put gemstones on your cap and then charge $800. Boom, luxury. Bling. Just Add Light says, loves this discussion. Tripler says, he is a wonderful human being and so supportive of content creators, and comment. I see his comments everywhere. I think he's sort of like the mayor of Fragcom content creation. I have much appreciation for Just Add.
He's followed me as long as I can remember. JJ Rudy Adonis is great.
Yeah. Tripler says, luxury is when you don't care what it costs. You have to have it. How many perfumes can you say that about these days? Yeah, I think a lot of people shape their taste around the cost of something. That they see that, this particular house or brand is selling this exclusive line at this premium. That is a benchmark. That is what's telling me this is the perfume that I need to pay attention to and I need to have in my possession. This is the pinnacle of quality. And that I would caution against that, because they pretty much have convinced you of something that isn't necessarily true by charging, $400, $500 or whatever amount of money. That's not really a good gauge at all. Don't discount your nose, Pep. You can definitely tell quality, but this is for you. But quality is a personal thing too. I would take that as a compliment. It's completely
objective.
Completely objective. Yeah, subjective.
Sorry.
I'm going to take out my Old Spice and my Brut right now. That is in my collection for reference. That's the thing, is like, it's such a personal thing that we can't really tell other people that the relationship that they have to any given sense is not valid. And that even comes down to people who are like, I really can appreciate the smell of cow manure in a pasture. And some people are going to say, oh my God, that's gross. How can you like something like that? But this is the thing. It's not about you. That's their relationship to that. And there may be a lot of fond associations to that. Let's face it, it's tacky. I think something that I would say, there's a lot of tacky. Oh, GMG says, you nailed it, JJ. Most of the perfumers who have access to premium materials nowadays lacks a professional background. While professional perfumers have to work on a budget, it's a vicious cycle. But we have these indie perfumers who were caught in the middle. Some of the indie perfumers who have this talent and this ability and this passion to really get intimate and understand the materials in their own way, while still, understanding the foundations of perfumery. Of course, you have to kind of understand how to build some structure in a perfume, and then you can kind of unlearn it. But there are people who are not learning anything to begin with. And then, yeah, and there's, oh my God, there's so much of that. Some of which I've actually done first impressions on my live stream, and you will see the expression on my face, even if I'm not sure what to say. Rafi says perfumes are like wine. No one knows how much it should cost, what the quality is, etc. No one can gauge it either in a blind sniff test. Absolutely true. Oh my God, that's such a
beautiful comparison.
Great analogy, because you have your people who want to just consume wine. They want to get drunk. They want to get buzzed. It tastes good enough. Tastes like wine. Does the trick. And then you have those who can discern the notes. Because wine...
And doesn't everyone have a really cheap bottle of perfume in their collection? Like when I say cheap, right? But it's not there because it costs $20. It's there because they like it. For some reason, there's something about it they like it. You know, that's you can say, and you can say the same about wine. Like you said, it's there to be used. It's different if you're a collector and you're only collecting very specific things and you know that they just cost this much, and but if you're a perfume wearer, you're a perfume user, you've got your personal budget. Obviously, no one should ever get into any financial trouble to buy perfume, something like perfume. That's just crazy. You work within your limitations and you can find lots of stuff that you love wearing.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter. It does not matter who, like Jovan Sex Appeal, I mean, I have a soft spot for Jovan Sex Appeal. I have a soft spot for, Taboo, but there were also like historic, that's another thing that I love too, not to go on a huge tangent at this point, but I guess that's the part of the stream where we're just having a tangential conversation, but cultural and social, the context of these fragrances are so great too. And it brings even more meaning to them to think that, your average person, that it was in the zeitgeist that people were smelling this way. And you get to revisit that. It's in sort of like the annals, the in your psyche. It's kind of burned in there from growing up, because we're all around the same age, 40s, early 50s, whatever. I don't know. Pep, you're about 40, right? You haven't turned 40 yet, right? You're about 38, 39, right? You're
29.
29. Oh, I'm so sorry. So sorry. It's the gray. You're very young looking otherwise. But we're all around the same age, so we have these memories. So there's something to be said about that. And honestly, I've learned that there are going to be these drugstore perfumes that have much more of this visceral impact. It just kind of gives me those kind of like those like goosebumps, like, ooh, I feel like I'm a kid again and I'm smelling this in my environment. Love that. And only certain fragrances can do that. And this is why packaging and presentation and marketing are all important. I think that was referring to the earlier in the conversation, but or simplicity in packaging too. I think simple packaging is the best packaging, because I know that there's much more effort in. It's not to say this is always the case. I don't want to overgeneralize. But when I see that there's coffrets inside of coffrets, like Russian doll style, and lots of, then I'm kind of concerned, like how much effort was put into the product that's, the little kernel inside, which is the perfume. If I have a simple box and then there's just a beautiful bottle inside of a simple box or a simple tube or something, then I know that like so much energy is put into the actual product. Yeah.
And in some ways, I think a lot of people expect that from indie as well. So I think it would be almost a strange way to present yourself as an indie if you were starting to have like very, very fancy packaging. Like, I guess at some point people would think you're a fraud. in
Well,
some ways.
but it also when I mentioned earlier how some like an indie brand has less buying power in terms of raw materials, in terms of how much they can get. They're also limited to packaging as well,
Yep.
because if you are only ordering a certain quantity of packaging, you've only got access to a limited amount of
Yeah.
designs and
Right.
styles,
Yeah.
and unless you're going to pay for custom made bottles and caps and put a lot of your investment into that, you've got to, like, and you do see it. You see some indie brands and they have very similar bottles and caps because they're probably all coming from the same
The same
supplier.
places. I can.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. Like I can tell you, in
Yeah.
Europe, there's like 2 or 3, and North America, same thing. So honestly, like my bottles and caps are not fancy and they're not very unique, and I know that, and there's nothing I can do about it, to be honest. Like I wish I would do much better, but that would, that would almost double how much my packaging already costs. And I think it's ludicrous knowing already that it's more than the perfume that's in the bottle per milliliter. You know what I mean? It's like, and this is not even special to me. Like any people that are making perfume, the packaging will always be more expensive than the actual
Yeah.
perfume. Always, always, always. And I swear to God, like even designers, like probably the perfume you're buying is like 8 cents or 10 cents in the bottle. You know what I mean? Ours is not, absolutely not. I can tell you this, but the packaging is still more expensive. And that's that. Like this is what you have access to. There's nothing else you can do about it. You know?
I love your bottles. I love your
Thank
bottles.
you.
I want to show folks who are watching here. I love the bottle, and I love because of there is a simplicity to it, and I love
Mm,
simplicity. I love iconography. I love these little icons for each of the fragrances. Now, I could be wrong since the name is Pistol, but this kind of reminds me of the pistils of a flower here.
mm,
Was that intentional, or is it? Or is
yeah.
it? Yeah,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
love
So
that. I love that.
I mean, I'm a graphic designer by trade. So I developed my own symbol system. Um, and yeah, I think this one, like every time I'm using rounded shapes, um, and solid colors. So the solid colors, so it's always like solid black. And by comparison, like this is feuille. I don't know if you're gonna.
Oh,
So
I'll
this is feuille, right? So you see, it's like just outlines.
yes.
So every time it's full colors, or the full black, like the half circle and pastel, this has more to do with like a more darker, stonen kind of mood. So not very sunny.
Hmm.
As opposed to when it's outlined where it's like more sunny, more, like aerial, something like this. And the circle is a bit more around like the rounder feminine aspects. The triangles are more dynamic and playful. Like they all have like a meaning. So I kind of compose this whole alphabet of symbols. Um, and yeah, this is how I'm using them. So this is why they have all their own little shapes on the bottom.
I love it. So when I was young, I have the symbol source book, which was like the resource
Mm-hmm.
for symbols that are used in all business and in public works and in everything from astrology to hobo symbols and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And as a kid, to this day, I still love looking through my book because I have a new version of it. I would just study all of them, and I'd be like, I want to do this
Mm-hmm.
someday. I want to create these little, logos and symbols. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that you chose one for each of your fragrances. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's absolutely brilliant. We have Michi here, Jean-Qui Scent. Hello, Scent of the Day Dryad from Papillon.
Oh, nice narcissus.
Yes, for sure, for sure. So I just want to remind folks again, there's only one left though. So if you donate 10 coffees to buymeacoffee.com, we have one more left of a sample. There's a sample pack, but also a mystery grab bag of 4 bottles of doubles that I have. Yes, I have gotten over the doubles. I'm letting go of doubles because it's madness, but I want to share the wealth. So if you donate 10 coffees, that's $50 at buymeacoffee.com/Joseph Kolb P. You must be in the United States. Only one, though. I only have one left. So the first person who does donate 10 coffees will get that 4-bottle sample pack, 4-bottle mystery grab bag with a sample pack. So I just want to remind folks of that. I do see a private chat. Okay. All right. Okay. I like how I'm saying, like, I see a private chat here, everybody. I'm reading. I'm not going to read it out loud, though. See, this is the problem. I don't have a producer who's like in my ear saying, like, hey. We're going to wrap this up a little bit in just a little bit, in just a few minutes here. Keith says that's a nice bottle. I store them in a closet, so bottle shape means next to nothing to me. I love bottles. I love exotic bottles, but I love simple bottles too. Pep, yes.
Oh no, I was going to say I'm with Keith. I put all my bottles where they're not on display. So I love a good looking bottle, but it doesn't really matter to me as long as the juice is great.
Yeah, and that's a really important thing too, especially somebody here who's a vintage collector. It is really a lot better to store your fragrances in a cupboard or a closet. Like I'm at the point where I'm going to invest. You see this little modest little shelf here? I mean, most of my collection, my mania of collecting, that's not real. That's just like a fraction of it that's actually on display. And I'm actually thinking of getting like an enclosure for it because I do want to make sure that they are protected from the elements, from light and heat, etc. I by Brian says very good bottle. Cube sphere creates a visual tension, which I think is lovely, and that's also echoed in the icons as well.
Exactly. Well said. I was gonna say that. Bravo! I love that you get it.
Of course, because I'm a very visual person as well. That's my other thing. Manly Scent says that's why I use Instagram. It's my virtual display cabinet. The bottles are safe in a cool, dark place. That's how yeah. Go ahead, Pep.
I think for my YouTube videos, JJ, I'm going to have green screen of a big perfume display from now on. So.
You got to make sure that everything's standing sentinel, every house in a row. I might get more followers. You might get more. I think I'm catching on to that. Obviously, I need to do that. This is too far away. People are not seeing what's over there. They can't see what I have on those shelves. I must have it right behind me, right here, showing it all off. GMG says, in my honest opinion, there's no subjectivity in quality. It's just a matter of information asymmetry. We, the general public, often lack the tools to recognize it both in raw materials and consumption, which is absolutely true. When we're thinking of an analysis of materials, the general public doesn't have that understanding or even the vocabulary for it to really understand it.
But it doesn't stop them from liking it if they don't know.
Right.
If they like it, they like it. I mean, isn't that all that matters?
Yeah, it doesn't. You don't have to have that prerequisite. You don't have to be like at that level where you must have like raw materials for reference in order to be a true perfume appreciator. That would be the gatekeeping that Derek Varanis-Radarian and I talk about, that there is no right way to be a perfume enthusiast. There's no rule book that you must adhere to. Maria, it looked like you might have had something that was on your mind.
I wanted exactly the same thing, so same.
Wonderful. So I know that we need to wrap up pretty soon, so I am going to gear up our theme music. So this is where I wish I did have somebody else. There we go. Because I have to be the producer and the director and everything on this little podcast. So I'm going to put myself in Zoom here. We have... Oh! Hi, Pep. They're going to say that. Do you want me to put you in full shot? Did you have something to say?
I was just going to make sure that we didn't have to sing along or anything like that. That's all.
No, there's no. This is an instrumental. This is just an instrumental. There's nothing you have to sing along to. So we are down to we're actually at the home stretch here for this season. I am bringing up the dates that are coming up here. We have just a few more. Next week we have P Along, the perfumer P Along. She'll be joining me and Rachel on Tuesday, May 16th. May 23rd, Roberto Dario and Diane St. Clair will be joining me and Rachel on that week. And then we have the finale with Marc Robzo 8, Margie Noir, Rachel, and Ryan the Perfume Bonfire will be returning. So definitely tune into that. That will be the season finale of Effluvium. We'll have our summer recess where we will have Effluvium streams bi-weekly or monthly, and we'll have on June 27th, we'll have Persolays for one of the summer sessions. So that's what we have geared up. So both of you, I want to thank you both very much for joining me. This has been an excellent conversation. Much love to you both.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Stick around for backstage for just a few minutes. And everybody who's tuned in, thank you so much. Be well. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Toodaloo. Ending broadcast in 1.